All right, everybody, we're back out here in what I am now calling the Box Testimonials, because just there in the background is the Box, just outside of where my home is here. And on a nice day like today, we see many groups go by and get to hear them tee off and get to hear not only the sounds of the drivers hitting the ball, but also the different reactions and responses that the players have to, what their playing partners have to the type of shot they hit. So this is otherwise a pretty quiet and serene backyard situation, but every 10 or 15 minutes or so, there's a new group that comes by and all that comes with them. Sometimes it's a guy by himself, which is always interesting to see what a guy's reaction is to a good or bad shot when he's playing solo compared to what it is when he's in the company of some other guys. But in any case, it's a nice setting, very quiet all winter long. There's not really any activity whatsoever back there until spring breaks, and then we've got for the next 6 months or so during the daylight hours. There's a lot to observe. I can't actually see where the people hit the ball to, so I have to kind of only go on the basis of the reaction, or occasionally, not rarely, but occasionally, I'll hear the sounds of the trees just right here, right next to the tee box, where someone has just absolutely sprayed one. And I talked about yesterday how I'm not a big bug spray guy, and I went into the reasons why that's the case. But I'll tell you, I might have to become a reformed bug spray user and start adopting bug spray, because it's very rarely that I'm in a situation where I'm just sitting down like this and where I'm, in a sense, swarmed by bugs. Normally when people use bug spray, maybe you'll be out on the golf course and you're kind of always moving and you're doing other things. Or even if you're outside and you're maybe with some other people, you're at least kind of engaged in conversation and things like that. But when you're literally just sitting here with bugs, gnats and a couple flies, it seems to be. We'll see. So maybe I'll go back on what I had said just yesterday. But anyway, what I had wanted to talk about today was cats, not bugs. A different animal, different creature. And the reason that I wanted to talk about cats is we have a cat. Samba is his name. He's a 4-year-old cat, and he is our first cat, not our first pet, because we also have a dog. And I feel like cats get kind of a bad rap, particularly within like the male community, right? There's like kind of this stigma or stereotype where if you have a cat, you're a cat guy, whatever that might mean. Maybe you're similar. I never understood if that meant you are like the type of personality that would have a cat is its own personality, separate from the type of person that would have a dog, or if perhaps the person who would have a cat almost like personifies the features of a cat, the characteristics of a cat, like almost like a more independent, reclusive type person, or more introverted, the type of person who would be likely to purchase a cat is maybe more likely to be like one, I suppose, is what I'm getting at. Anyway, that might be true. But in having both a dog and a cat, and now a child, and a wife, there's lots of different energies going around with these different creatures. And the cat, I think, it remains the most intriguing. If you think about it, right from when you first get a cat, you basically have to do nothing. You don't have to um, really train it in any way, right? Like once the litter box is set up, it kind of knows how to do that on its own. It doesn't need to really be potty trained or anything. In terms of food, you put out the food and it eats at its own pleasure, at its own discretion, never eating too much. Well, that's the case of our cat. I understand that there's cats out there who are fat cats, which is maybe a whole other thing. But in any case, with our cat, he and most cats, from what I understand, they just come and eat. Occasionally, as long as there's food in the bowl, they will return as is needed. Um, our cat has become kind of a both an indoor and outdoor cat. He goes out and does his kind of perimeter scan, goes around our property here, kind of looks out at some birds and things like that, squirrels, runs around a bit, and then ultimately returns. What I've come to know about him is he is, we have a small dog and a cat, and where we live there are foxes, large birds of prey, hawks and things like that. There are occasionally some coyotes, and those are probably the only real prey or predator type animals, if you will, with the exception of the fox, because the fox is more of a scavenger type thing, from what I understand. But in any case, when we put out our small dog, we're actually more concerned if he's unsupervised. We've come to be more concerned if he's unsupervised about what could happen to him, particularly because he's older, than the cat. The cat, I've now witnessed him. Today was the second time, but I've witnessed him in 2 different showdowns with other animals. The first time was with a raccoon. There was a raccoon that had come up on our deck, and the cat was outside at the time, and the cat ended up they ended up in this like face-to-face situation, and ultimately the raccoon ended up in a corner. The cat had somehow almost like corralled him into a corner, and there he was, this raccoon who was probably twice his size, 3 times his size, had big claws and whatever. I guess it's kind of like hands with a raccoon, and it would have likely been a problem if the cat ultimately had attacked him, but the cat was just completely fearless. He corralled him, he cornered him, and then he was standing about 10-12 feet away, and he was advancing on him very slowly, almost like what you see in one of these nature shows or National Geographic with like a lion when it's kind of stalking through the grass. It was kind of interesting to see his predatory instincts kick in like that. And I've observed him do it again today, because I walked down in the front of the house and there was a fox sitting right out in the front driveway, and the fox was at a dead stop. And I've never seen a fox like that. And he did look somewhat rabid. But in any case, the cat, I didn't know this, but the cat similarly had almost stalked this fox, and the fox was at a standstill. He was frozen, and the cat was under a car. Initially, if I would see something like this from a protective lens, I was more thinking that these wild animals were more pursuing the cat. But in fact, as I opened up the door, the fox went to run, and the cat went after him. So the cat was very much in this predatory stage. Not necessarily from like a hunting perspective, but I think just just out of curiosity to see how these other animals will react to it. when it is in an aggressive or an assertive posture. So, all is to say, I think cats get a bad rap. I think they're majestic animals. I think they're very low maintenance. They're awesome to have around the house. If you just observe them, they require almost nothing. They don't really need. Our cat, at least, doesn't need to be played with much. It kind of makes its own play, which often is at night. It'll kind of run around. But because it is kind of an indoor-outdoor cat, it does almost find its own play. I know that many people get two cats so they can play with one another, but our cat has remained in great spirits since we've had him, and has found a lot of action torturing our dog is part of it. But the dog is an alpha as well, so they kind of go toe to toe. But in any case, I feel like I'm getting way into the weeds of my personal experience with a cat. But ultimately, I think these cats get a bad rap when you have this stigma where men in particular have a preconceived notion of not what cats are like, but what perhaps it would mean for them to have a cat. And then they have these judgments of other men or people in general who have cats. And I think that's just a little bit of a closed perspective. You know, people just, I hate cats. And it's like, well, did you have a really bad experience with a cat, or you yourself are actually repelled by by seeing a cat or smelling something to that effect? And so I kind of push back on this a little bit, in the sense that, like, do you really not like cats? Do you really? Or is that just something that you've been saying for many, many years? Or something that perhaps your dad said? He was a cat hater. Or someone else, some other significant figure in your life also didn't like cats. And then as a result, you too repel against cats. Or you wouldn't want to appear as the type of guy who might have a cat. Or you're concerned about what other people might think of you if you did have a cat. Smoke a cigarette from time to time, particularly when I don't have a cigar on hand, which is the case today. Sometimes I have to, this is a cat-like feature, sometimes I have to make a decision whether I want to go into public and interact with people at a cigar shop to get a cigar, or, like, basically I'm weighing out, well, if I don't have a cigar and it's like a Sunday like today, and it's an opportunity to relax and unwind, and you get to pick your spots with who you would and would not like to interact with. Sometimes I weigh in my head what I would prefer to do more, which is to have a cigar. In this case, a cigar is what we're talking about. This applies to other things as well, but to have a cigar, or to not have a cigar but not have to interact with anyone. And it's probably 50-50. It's probably a 50-50 situation. If I have a cigarette, like I do now, I also have a young kid. So when that's the case, you have kind of a, you're always on the clock, if you will. So by the time, you get to the cigar shop, get ready, drive over, get to the cigar shop, buy a cigar or two, browse, come home, it's possible that my window for smoking one has closed. So that's how that works. But every now and then, smoke a cigarette. Obviously, is it bad for you? Sure. Yes, of course. But from time to time, it's nice to have it. My My in-laws are Persian. Father-in-law's a cigarette smoker for many years, kind of almost that European influence type thing. I don't know about for some of you out there, but certainly for me, if I ever go to Europe, one of the first things I do when I get there is get a pack of cigarettes. Uh, don't do that here at home, but it's kind of almost part of the experience when you're there. Um, so anyway, I think there's more to touch on here, but for today, that'll be it.